Now, you don't need me to tell you that it's been a pretty uninspiring year at the box office. Yeah, there's been success stories like Super Mario Bros., Across the Spider-Verse, and Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but generally, 2023 has been a relentless cavalcade of disappointingly bland superhero films, unwanted remakes, and massive failures like Dial of Destiny, Shazam 2, The Flash, and The Little Mermaids. It seems like almost nothing is inspiring people to go to the movies these days. But then along comes a little low-budget movie like Sound of Freedom that I can honestly say I knew precisely nothing about until a few days ago, which seems to have ignited some kind of firestorm in the public consciousness and capitalised on the gaping hole left by Dial of Destiny's implosion, resulting in massive overperformance at the box office and a flood of emails practically demanding that I watch it now. Well, never let it be said that the drinker backs down from a challenge. And guess what? Sound of Freedom is really fucking good. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that it deserves the hype and praise that it's been getting, managing to tackle some pretty brutal subject matter in a sensitive and restrained way that never feels exploitative, delivering some excellent performances from a talented cast that don't overshadow their roles, and a storyline that feels neatly grounded in the true events that it's been based on. In short, it's exactly what you'd want in a movie like this, keeping you gripped and tense right until the end, and almost never descending into the kind of extravagant Hollywood tropes that often derail true stories like this. So what the hell, let's dive right in and summarise the plots. The story centres around Tim Ballard, a Homeland Security agent tasked with monitoring and arresting child traffickers across the US. Needless to say, it's a tough job that takes its toll on the man's emotions, but the bigger problem is that for all the criminals they've put in prison, they've failed to recover any of their actual victims. Most of the time it's because they're outside Ballard's jurisdiction, hidden away in places like Mexico and Central America. But when Ballard finally manages to recover a young trafficking victim named Miguel who begs him to rescue his sister, he hatches a plan to mount a massive sting operation that will take down the entire network and save dozens, possibly even hundreds of innocent children. The plan eventually sees him travelling to Colombia and partnering up with a former cartel boss who's turned his life around as the men work to set up a false front and gain the trust of the child traffickers. But with his superiors threatening to pull the plug and his partners growing suspicious of his intentions, can Ballard really hope to pull off the seemingly impossible? How much will he be willing to risk to complete his mission, and can he really hope to reunite Miguel with his lost sister? One of the things that really impressed me about Sound of Freedom was how restrained and grounded it all is. It's been classified as an action movie for some reason, but if you're expecting to see gunfights, explosions, and big blowout set pieces, you're definitely going to be disappointed because that's absolutely not what this film is. It's more of a tense character-driven drama, very much grounded in reality, where there's no big dramatic resolutions to the major plot points, no climactic battle that sees our hero fighting his way out of an impossible situation. What we get instead is the grinding reality of work like this, the negotiations and information gathering that goes on behind the scenes, the tough decisions and compromises that have to be made for the greater good, the personal risks and sacrifices that the job demands. You can see the toll it's taken on Ballard, the things he's forced to see that will probably haunt him for the rest of his life, the people he's forced to play nice with, when you can tell he'd much rather be pounding their faces into fucking mush. And it's all hammered home by some pretty harrowing scenes of the trafficking victims themselves and what they're subjected to. I mean, let's face it, seeing young kids being subjected to stuff like this is always going to be a tough watch, but to the film's credit, it never gets gratuitous or exploitative for pure shock value. It shows you just enough to leave you in no doubt about what's going to happen or what just took place, without feeling the need to show the disgusting act itself. It walks a fine line, but it does it with sensitivity and good judgment, thank God. And big props to the actors for their work on this one. Jim Caviezel's had a bit of a weird career in his time, starring in big movies like The Passion of the Christ and The Count of Monte Cristo, but it's like he was never quite able to parlay those roles into mainstream success. He feels like he's been a star in waiting for like 20 years now, but I've got to say, he gives a knockout performance in Sound of Freedom. Like the rest of the film, he's restrained and subdued as Tim Ballard, but he can say a lot with just the slight change of expression or a haunted look in his eyes. He's a man that's seen things he'll never be able to unsee, and it weighs heavily on his soul. He's neatly balanced out by Bill Camp as a former cartel employee trying to atone for past mistakes. He provides a bit of much needed levity in what's obviously a pretty heavy movie, always chomping on cigars and cracking jokes, but underneath it all there's some pretty dark secrets that only come out near the finale. What's almost as interesting as the movie itself is the reaction it seems to have provoked from the mainstream media that seemed determined to tear it down at any cost. I mean, you'd think a movie that sheds light on the hidden nightmare of child trafficking would be a pretty admirable cause worthy of support, but apparently not for the people who applauded Cuties as a bold piece of artistic expression. Why don't they want this movie to succeed? Why is Hollywood so defensive about it? It almost gets you thinking, doesn't it? Either way, regardless of the media firestorm raging around it, Sound of Freedom is an excellent movie that kept me thoroughly gripped from start to finish. It's a film that reminds us that even though there's a lot of bad people in this world doing the worst things imaginable, there are also still good men fighting to bring them to justice. And maybe that's something we could all do with remembering. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.